If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR for the app, or go to ANCHOR.fm to get started. I love using Anchor, and it's how I got started on my podcast, and I highly recommend. So please give Anchor a download and a try if podcast is on your needs. Welcome to Dirty Secrets of Massage. I am your host, Ava, and I'll be telling you the dirty truth about the massage therapy industry, different clients I encounter, and all things massage. Please send any questions or topic requests to dirtysecretsofmassage@yahoo.com. And welcome. I'm back. And here we are once again. It's been a few months. Sort of had a rough summer with a sick dog that ended up getting put down. And somewhere along the line, I've lost one of my tortoises. Pretty sure he's housed up with one of the neighbors, and I didn't necessarily go breaking down the doors to see if anybody had him. And so I'm down to one tortoise, and I've gained another dog. My neighbor from behind me gave me a puppy, and he is now 6 months old. Of course, that's approximate, but he's full of it, and he's funny, and we all have a good time together. But anyhow, let's get on with the show. And so I've talked about the creeper before, the one down the street that followed me home and claims he's not a pervert or anything, you know. And I didn't do anything with that information for a while because I was waiting my turn to get back at him. And I knew if I waited long enough, the opportunity would be perfect for me to really get him back. And so not too long ago, I saw a vehicle pull up across the street that I didn't really recognize right away. And this Hispanic lady got out of that vehicle. All the windows were down, and she pulled up across the street. And she had some papers in her hand of some sort and walked up to the door, it seemed. And then all of a sudden, she went over to the truck that was parked in the driveway and snatched one of the cats off the hood of the truck. And she took that cat and shoved it in her Jeep. And I asked her if that was her cat. I had stepped out on the porch to kind of see what was going on, and I asked if that cat belonged to her. And she began to wave the papers in her hand and said it was her cat. And it looked like it was a flyer for a missing cat maybe she had. And so the gentleman across the street, he feeds the feral cats. And so technically, I don't know which cats are really his and which ones aren't, but honestly, they're all his if you ask me, if he's feeding them all. And so she rolled the windows up and was getting in quite the fight with this cat, and it was quite humorous, you know. And then she drove down the street, and somewhere in that interaction, I realized that was the wife or girlfriend of the guy that was bothering me. Oh, how interesting. How interesting. And so I stepped into my yard and watched her drive away. And sure enough, she pulled into her driveway 5 or 6 houses down the street. And I go back to sitting in my rocking chair on the porch. And the next thing I know, she's pulling up in front of my house. Well, 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 what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Are you here to stir up some noise with the massage girl? Or are you here to talk trash? Or what do you want, my dear? And so she gets out of her car the same Jeep and gets out of her Jeep and comes around the front of her Jeep. And I told her, "You're not coming over here." "Well, you're not coming over here." And she immediately went back in her car and rolled down the window and started running her mouth at me. And she wasn't saying anything obnoxious or rude, and she seemed like she was actually a nice lady. And so somewhere along the line, I distracted her and twisted and manipulated the conversation to my favor and asked her about her significant other. "Does he look like this? Is his name this? Is it spelled like that? Do you work at such and such a place in such and such a town?" And she finally asked me how the hell I knew all this information. And I said, "Why don't you ask your boyfriend?" And she stated, "That's not my boyfriend, it's my husband." "Well, maybe you need to get a better leash on your husband like he has on his dog, because he comes sniffing around here all the time." Well, she wasn't too happy with what I told her. And I didn't tell her what he did. I told her to go ask him. "Why don't you go ask him?" And so somewhere down the street, she made a U-turn and was headed back to her house. And the gentleman across the street held a 20-minute conversation with her right in front of me. And so that's his mode of operation, to talk to all the neighbors about me and be sneaky. I'm never included in any of the conversations, but, they act like they're plotting to burn my house down or blow the block up. But see, he's a felon, and so he can only do so much without any repercussions. More repercussions than I would get, that's for sure. And so that's what happened with him. And a few days later, maybe a week or so, I saw the creeper walking his dog again, but guess what? He was walking him somewhere else. I guess it's kind of boring walking down by the highway, isn't it? It's certainly not as fun as walking in front of my house, where you might see me watering the lawn in a skirt, or cutting the grass in a swimsuit, or maybe even changing clothes in front of the window with the blinds open. I'm sure my whole neighborhood's probably seen me half naked at one point or another. And I really don't care. I really don't care. I don't hear anybody complaining. I certainly don't hear anybody complaining. And so that's what happened with him, and I haven't seen him at all except for that one time after the encounter with his wife. And see, that's her house. And she's got just like a menial, kind of a dead-end job at like a fast food place, I guess. There's nothing wrong with that. If it seems to suit her well, then it suits her well. And so I haven't had any problems with them. But I'll continue with everybody else on another episode. But I just want you guys to know that I'm back and I enjoy the interaction. And I enjoy telling my stories. I'll be starting another podcast soon. More confessions of sorts, but not like this. And so I wish you a good rest of the week, or actually the weekend. And we'll get on with the show. And it's going to be time for me to go back to the swing club soon. It's been far too long. It's been far too long.